What do sci-fi films, electronic music, and 1920s Soviet economic strategy have in common? Turns out, a lot of things. The final months of 1920 are full of technological wizardry and revolutionary thought. This is Between Two Wars Season 2, a chronological summary of the interwar years, where we cover the zeitgeist, the culture, the technology, the art, the sports, and much more in the era when, for better or for worse, humanity ushered in modern times. I'm Indy Neidell. The endless violence in Eastern Europe appears to be partially coming to an end this harvest season, with truces signed between Poland and Lithuania and the Soviet Union and the Revolutionary Insurrectionary Army of Ukraine. But both these agreements hide cynical political machinations on all sides as the battle for ideological and territorial control in the region continues unabated. An open war of independence is escalating in Ireland, and other ones well underway are raging throughout the world. And like any season of the interwar years, the medium of film is ever growing. The Italian film Il Mostro di Frankenstein, The Monster of Frankenstein, has enjoyed its release this year. Okay, well, I say enjoyed, but it's a bit of a flop. It is supposedly the third screen adaptation of the iconic 1818 book by Mary Shelley. The first was a short Thomas Edison production in 1910, and the second was the longer 1915 production Life Without Soul. Il Mostro di Frankenstein could have very well been destined to be the great Frankenstein adaptation. Its lead man is Luciano Albertini, a pretty famous Italian actor, and it's an undeniably exciting story, but heavy censorship requirements will mean the film's running time is slashed to just over half an hour and make it pretty boring. It will go largely forgotten as a piece of film, especially after 1931 when the much more definitive Universal Pictures version comes out. It will also be one of the few Italian horror films of the interwar era. See, when Benito Mussolini seizes control of Italy in 1922, his fascist regime will ban productions in the genre. Sparty just said that they don't have a copy of the film. Is that what you said?
All footage is gone. There's only one still.
There's one still from Italian Frankenstein. Some of you might know Italian Spider-Man. Imagine how cool Italian Frankenstein would be based on Italian Spider-Man. Pretty awesome. It's a shame that the film is lost. Well, anyway, while the Italian Frankenstein production may have been a bit of a failure, audiences can enjoy many other films this season. The first ever Burmese feature film, Love and Liquor, is released on October 13th, a day that will be commemorated as Myanmar Movie Day. Science fiction is also cementing itself as a film genre. 2 adaptations of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde were released earlier this year. Other pioneering films such as Algol, another German production, and The Invisible Ray, an American serial. And in this season, a completely new sound, one that will forever be associated with science fiction movies, is created: the Theremin. Invented in October by Russian physicist and trained cellist Lev Theremin, it is one of the world's first electrical music instruments and will be the first ever to be mass-produced. If you do not recognize the name, you will definitely recognize the sound. Whoa. Okay, there's an actual theremin right there, huh? Cool. See, everybody knows the theremin, right? Funnily enough, this weird-sounding instrument is the product of Soviet state-sponsored research. Theremin has recently started working at the newly established Physico-Technical Institute, directed by acclaimed physicist Abram Yaffe. Soviet Russia may be locked in economic hardship and war, but science is at the top of the regime's agenda, holding the important ideological function of proving the triumph of modern communism. Though only 24, Theremin is already an accomplished physicist and has a wealth of technical experience working as a military radio engineer. He has joined the Institute to research high-frequency electrical oscillation. His first invention is what he calls a radio watchman. It involves an antenna radiating an electromagnetic field across a room, which can detect any disruption in its frequency if something or someone passes through it, triggering an alarm. Basically, it's using radio technology to create a burglar alarm, the usefulness of which should be pretty obvious, especially to a government rapidly expanding its security services. Theremin's next piece of work is similar, but here he's interested in measuring the disruption of an electromagnetic field as accurately as possible. So he sets up a single tone frequency that shifts in pitch upon any movement. He quickly discovers that the closer he moves his hand to the circuit, the higher the frequency, and if he shakes his hand, he can create a vibrato effect. Theremin has realized that he has brought together his two great passions, physics and music. He is literally making music out of electricity and sets about working out how to actually play it, piecing together melodies he knows by heart from his cello playing. Encouraged by his peers, he devotes his time to creating a full instrument from his discovery. The finished product has two antennae at a right angle with one another. The horizontal antenna controls volume, the vertical one pitch. Theremin calls his new instrument the etherphone. That's a cool name. It's better than the theremin. The etherphone, and performs it publicly for the first time in November this year to gathered students of the mechanical engineers group. The gathered audience sit there and marvel at the man standing before them, seeming to simply draw music out of thin air. In the following years, Theremin will patent his instrument and perform it to Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin in the Kremlin, who will be extremely taken with the device, seeing its potential as a propaganda tool. Not long after, Theremin will tour throughout the Soviet territories, then Europe, then America, and will go on to be a pretty interesting figure in the history of espionage. That is a story for another time. His invention will be mass-produced and become world famous, although maybe disappointingly for him, largely treated as a novelty item for B-rate sci-fi films and psychedelic music. Nevertheless, it is one of the most important steps in the early history of electronic music and will inspire innovators such as Robert Moog to take things even further. And in its own time, the theremin is part of something much larger, something I've already mentioned: Soviet electricity. Like many Marxists, Lenin sees electrification as the means to achieve a communist society. It will create clean and bright factories in the city and play out a civilizing mission in the countryside, eliminating backwardness, ignorance, and poverty. And this season, it looks like it will all finally happen when on December 22nd, the 8th Congress of Soviets of the Russian SFSR approves the Goelro Plan. That's Goelro. The Congress is officially the supreme power in Soviet Russia, although it is composed only of workers. No clergy, no nobles, no bourgeoisie have the vote. It was originally intended as a democratic body. However, it is becoming increasingly deferential to purely Bolshevik interests, the party of Lenin and those who led the October Revolution. Anyhow, it is the first of many Soviet plans for economic recovery that we'll see throughout the 1920s. The Goelro, a Russian acronym for the State Commission of Electrification of Russia, was formally established in February 1920 after a government resolution to draw up a plan for electrification of the country. The commission comprises some 200 scientists and engineers who finally present their 500-page plan to the 8th Congress in December. Lenin ensures that the presentation is a truly theatrical show, declaring to delegates, "Communism is Soviet power plus the electrification of the whole country. Only when the whole country has been electrified and industry, agriculture, and transport have been placed on the technical basis of modern large-scale industry, only then shall we be fully victorious." We must see to it that every factory and every electric power station becomes a center of enlightenment. The plan is, of course, accepted. And it's an ambitious one. It proposes the building of 112 regional power stations across the country, although only specific plans for a group of 30 top priority ones are laid out in any detail and specifically promoted. The newly electrified economy will rationalize and mechanize labor, make farms function like factories, and even support an expanded infrastructure network. Members of the Commission are also prepared to work with Europe and America to make this happen, reopening international trade and importing capital, data, and equipment in return for Russia's vast natural resources. Implementing all this will prove pretty difficult. Political differences, bureaucratic nightmares, and lack of resources will all get in the way. Still, it is the first step to transforming the Soviet economy and provides the framework for future industrialization drives. Nowhere close to the 112 power plants are built, but some huge ones are, such as the hydroelectric Dnieper Dam, which some of you might recognize from 1941 episodes of my World War II series. The plan is also representative of Soviet policy in general. For one thing, it reveals the increasingly centralizing impulse of a Soviet government. For another, it indicates the increasing desire to develop socialism inside Soviet territory rather than the immediate exportation of international revolution. Soviet Russia is to become a powerful, modern, and awe-inspiring state, which will lead the world to communism by example. But there is more to marvel at this season than vast technological questions in Soviet Russia. In the States, for example, Americans are reading the new literary marvel out of England. Agatha Christie's The Mysterious Affair at Styles is published in the US this October. Though Christie is English, her book will not be published in Britain until January 1921. Her first published novel introduces the legendary detective Hercule Poirot and the popular characters Inspector Japp and Captain Arthur Hastings. Christie will write 65 other detective books and become the best-selling novelist in history, outsold only by the Bible and possibly William Shakespeare. The Mysterious Affair at Styles tells the story of Poirot, a Belgian refugee from the Great War, settling in England to live his new life. His friend Hastings is staying with Emily Inglethorpe and her family. When Emily dies of strychnine poisoning, Poirot is called in to use the little grey cells, Hastings, the little grey cells, to solve the murder. Poirot and Christie's mysteries they've pretty much become the gold standard of 20th century crime fiction. And Christie will continue to churn out whodunits for over 50 more years. Poirot's character was inspired by Christie's war work as a nurse, dispenser, and apothecary assistant, where she met and worked with actual Belgian refugees. She began writing the book in 1916, when sympathy for Belgium was seen as the patriotic British thing to do, seeing as the invasion of Belgium by Germany in 1914 triggered Britain's entry into the Great War. This didn't make it easy for Christie to get it published, though. The Mysterious Affair at Styles was rejected by several publishers before it finally sees the light of day. And Rupert Bear, the children's comic strip character, also makes his first appearance this season on November 8th. It is fairly unremarkable. A single panel on the story of Little Lost Bear in the Daily Express, the British tabloid newspaper. Rupert will become very well known over the years and have a large fan following and several screen adaptations. The bear lives with his parents in a house in Nutwood, and he wears a red jumper, checked yellow trousers, and a yellow scarf. He is originally a brown bear, but will soon be drawn white to save on printing costs. And there are other innovations making their appearance around the world. Canadian physicist Frederick Banting has a brainwave that will lead to his discovery of a way to isolate insulin to treat diabetes. American astronomers Francis Pease and John Anderson will make the first measurement of a star that isn't the sun using the new Michelson Stellar Interferometer and a 100-inch telescope at Mount Wilson Observatory. And a successful landing at midnight at Roosevelt Field on Long Island proves that planes can both fly at all times of the day and be completely fireproof. The powerful arc lighting used from the plane to illuminate the runway is a serious fire hazard. And so 1920 draws to a close. Now, you might remember from a few episodes ago that presidential hopeful Warren G. Harding began his campaign to lead America with a call for a return to normalcy. Well, this obviously resonated with a lot of people because he wins the election by a landslide this November. It's funny, when you compare the promises being made by the leaders of the United States and Soviet Russia. Both countries promised their citizens they can look forward to a more prosperous and a brighter future. But Americans are told this will come with normalcy and civilized serenity. And Russians are told this will come with the fires of revolution and industry. Both are different visions of what the modern world will be. Keep watching to see how they play out. If you've found yourself a bit confused about all the politics behind these Soviet plans, then make sure you check out our Season 1 episode, Lenin's Death and Stalin's Rise to Power. You can click on it right here when it comes up in a few seconds. Our TimeGhost Army member of the week is Frank Frank Monard. I like that. Can we say Monard? Okay, Sparty's nodding, Monard. It is the TimeGhost Army, though, that is responsible for making everything you see on all of our YouTube channels. So if you want to see us continue our work and even grow, then do what Frank did and join the TimeGhost Army at patreon.com or timeghost.tv. It seems that in the 20th century, many will abide by the words of Frankenstein's monster. If I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear. This is blood. Blood.